Okay, first we had variables. Now we'll look at operators. And I'll follow the same approach here as I did in the previous section. I'll give a quick summary on the slides. So if you want a reference, you can go back to those slides, pause the screen, and have it up in front of you when you're practicing. But I'll give the details and more intricate explanations when I do the interactive example in Firebug. All right, mathematical operations. You have the asterisk, which means multiplication, the slash, which means division, and the plus sign, which, if both the thing on the left and the right are numbers, means addition. Also, I'm going to have the convention that when I show code samples in the slides, this little arrow means returns. So that means if I define a variable whose value is 7, and then I compute that variable times 2, the value that gets returned by JavaScript, in other words, the value you would see on the next line in the Firebug console, is 14. And I'll use that convention consistently throughout the lectures, where the arrow is not something that actually prints out. It just means that's what the return value is. The percent operator is a little bit confusing, so we'll look at an example, but it means remainder. So if x is equal to 7, and I compute x divided by 6, what's the remainder? The answer is 1. Plus plus is also a little confusing, so we'll use some explicit examples, but it means add 1 to something. So if x was 7, and then we did x plus plus, and then we asked what x was, x is now 8. The only string operator that we'll look at right now is the plus operator, but we'll see that there are also string functions in a later section. So JavaScript decides what you mean by plus. Do you mean addition, or do you mean concatenation, mash two things together? The reason that that plus operator is used twice is just other languages did it earlier, and programmers are used to it. And so JavaScript didn't want to break the convention. It's a little confusing to use the same operator to mean two different things, depending on the context. If the thing on the left and right are numbers, plus means addition. If the thing on either side of the plus are, either one of them is a string, then it means concatenation, mash them together. So probably if they started from scratch, it would not have been a good idea to overload the meaning of plus to give it two different meanings based on context. But other languages have already done it. Programmers are so used to it that if JavaScript didn't do that, programmers from other languages would be confused. There's also the equal operator. So equals is a little bit confusing to non-programmers because it doesn't say these things are already equal. The equals operator means assign the value on the right side to the thing on the left side to make it equal. The equals operator means test to see if they're already equal. And we'll revisit this a lot when we get to conditional operations. So if x is equal to 7, and I say, is x equal to 7? It says yes. If I say, is x equal to 8? It says no. And there's a whole bunch of other Boolean operators that test if something is true or false. There's less than, there's greater than, there's not, there's and, there's or, and a whole bunch of others. And we will look at those in a lot more detail in this section on conditionals. But for a very brief example, if x is equal to 7, if I then ask, is x less than 8? It says yes. Okay, that's a quick summary. Let's experiment and try out these things in a little more detail interactively. So to try things out interactively, I bring up either Google Chrome or Firefox with Firebug installed. I either go to the folder containing the test HTML file or the development environment, and I drag the test HTML file onto the browser. I don't see anything interesting yet, but I bring up Firebug. It comes up in a separate window because I previously configured it that way. And I try some things out. So some math operations, I say var x equals 7. Click run. It says undefined because the var statement itself has no value, but x has a value of 7. And so I can look at x times, asterisk for times 2, 14. X divided by 2, 3.5. X plus 2, 9. And the more confusing one is the percent operator, which is the remainder, or sometimes called the modulo operator. So if I take x, which is 7, and I divide it by 2, what's the remainder? The answer is 1. And finally, let me point out that none of those actually change the value of x. So x is still what it originally was, 7. But there is an operator that changes the value plus plus. So if I say x plus plus, and now after I do that, I ask what's the value of x, it's now 8. So those plus, star, divide, percent, and plus plus are the most common basic math built-in operators. You can also use plus for mashing two strings together, for concatenating them. And Java decides by context what the plus operator means. If both things are numbers, it means addition. If either one is a string, it means mash them together, concatenation. So I say var part1 equals hello, var part2 equals world, and then I can say var message equals part1 plus part2 plus an exclamation point. And then if I look at message, it's hello world exclamation point. I also want to point out that strings are case sensitive. So I mentioned briefly in the slides, and we'll visit it more with conditionals, that equals equals tests if two things are the same. So if I say is message equal to by, of course, equals to by, it's a test, not an assignment, it will say no, it's not equal to by. If I say message equals equals hello world exclamation point, it says yes. But if I test if it's equal to lowercase h hello world exclamation point, it will say no. So strings in JavaScript are case sensitive. An uppercase h and a lowercase h are not the same when you compare two strings to each other.